Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Sitting across the console from me today, I'm going to say a dear old friend who I have not seen actually in a long time. April, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
April Ryder is here. She's an industry veteran, although I don't like the word veteran with some of us, but you are a veteran. You just recently named as VP of Radio Promotions and Marketing for Quartz Hill Records, brand new record label?
Yes. Benny Brown, which started Broken Bow.
Oh.
Benny is the guy, and Stoney approached him, and so Stoney, New York. And so, it's deal with the Orchard and Stoney, New York. I know you're familiar with the Orchard. And, Stoney, New York. So, yes, and it's called Quartz Hill with a Q.
And
Very
then before that, you served as general manager of operations for Stony Creek.
With Benny Brown.
Yeah. You were responsible for launching Thompson Square's single, Are You Gonna Kiss Me or Not? Which became country radio's most played song of 2011. For those of us that can remember that far back.
I know, right?
And then you and I met. You were 10 years as the VP of promotions for Curb Records.
Right.
During the time that both you and I worked on Tim McGraw and LeAnn Rimes, JoDee Messina, Rodney Atkins, all those acts.
Right here,
a lot of the records hanging here. And before that, you were at Decca.
I was.
Another LeAnn Womack you were with, Gary Allan, Mark Chesnutt. And then you spent 6 years as managing partner at RPM Entertainment, working in the management team for Tim McGraw.
Well, with Scott Siman.
Yeah,
and Scott and Tim had parted ways for a while. So Scott started RPM, and then when I left Stony Creek, I went to work for Scott and learned how to be in management. Yes.
Yeah.
And then him and Tim got back together and they started their own little thing, and I continued on the management path, but did it for 6 years and went on an apology tour. I can say that from the label side. Because, you just don't really know what they go through. And you ask a lot of managers. And so I did. I went into several people, I'm sure you know, like John Lytle and Greg Hill, and said, I'm really sorry that I asked you to have your artist in Seattle when you were in Boston,
Well, those were the days.
Yeah, right.
Talking about that, the industry has evolved. It's evolved a lot since you and I started in it.
Oh, my goodness, right?
Streaming. Let's talk about that first, because streaming has really changed the face of radio. And let's talk about radio, because that's always the key component. Anytime you talk to someone who wants a record deal, they always say, because I need that record company to get me on radio. And I still think that's true to a large part, right?
It is. I mean, you can be a monster hit. And, you have TikTok, you have streaming on different platforms, Spotify and Pandora and, Amazon, Apple, all of the ones, and you can, have a decent living off that. But if you want to go to the next level, you still have to have radio. Can
an independent artist on an independent label have that success? I mean, would we consider someone like, say, a Jason Aldean with Broken Bow? Was that the route that made sense? Or should I say, does that still make sense for an artist? Or does it even make sense to be an indie artist on an indie label? Or should you be looking for major label, major distribution? What are those key components to make radio successful?
Really, at first, when Spotify, I'll just take Spotify because I probably know the most about that, because ironically, my radio guy from Salt Lake City, then Las Vegas, and then he went to San Diego, moved to Nashville, And then he started with Sirius XM, and then he's now one of the global guys with Spotify Country, John Myers. And so I've kind of learned a little bit from him on how it works. But, at first it was kind of like real taboo with radio to talk about streaming, I mean, it was viewed as competition. Obviously it is. And, they just really hated it. But
I was going to say, did terrestrial radio resent the streaming services like Spotify
at first,
and Pandora?
I think at first it was definitely contentious. But now the irony of it is it's kind of turned into almost like a research platform, if you will, of a situation where it's almost you're researching your record before you take it to radio. And that works a lot. Now I think it's radio is maybe a little burnout on it. It's fantastic. And I can give you an example. I had our staff working Chase Rice. And Chase obviously had big success. He's a songwriter, but he'd had some success in the streaming world. And I won't name the radio person, but when we took Chase Rice out to radio in Michigan, the club was packed. This pretty big programmer at the time just kind of was very, very taken, like, how could that possibly be? I'm not playing this record. So I think that when the tide turned, maybe 5 years ago, you really started to see it a lot. The radio started embracing those numbers. So when you go to them now and you go, well, we got 80 million streams and now we're going to radio, that does hold some water, I think.
With that being said, can an independent artist on his own or her own, can they have success at terrestrial radio without the record deal in place, just relying on, say, Spotify, TikTok, any of those? Or do they need that label push behind them? Because it is a machine. Well,
the irony of it is so many labels are signing those TikTok stars and those Spotify stars and those streaming stars for an independent artist to go. Now, Jason, I would say, is a little different. You brought up Jason because he did have Benny, again, behind him, and they had Craig Morgan, and they'd had some success. So, but I would say a true independent like Joe Blow down here on the street that says, how do I do this? Definitely streaming is the way to go first, because you're not going to walk in. The real estate, there's just not enough real estate on a chart, right, as you know. So there's just, and when you take 28 labels that have 6 artists each, and just do the math, right? And that's not including the ones right here on your wall and, the McGraws and all the others that are givens. So you can just take those all out. So that's half of them gone, right? Because the rest are superstars. So there's 28 labels with 6 new acts trying to divvy up the rest. It's very tight.
So you just brought up Tim McGraw as a superstar, or any of those, Jason Aldean, and we're talking about country radio right now, but it really cross-pollinates in any genre.
Sure.
The superstars really get first dibs at radio play, chart action over anybody else?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and they get the benefit of the doubt. That's why you'll hear some superstars, you go, oh my God, that song is terrible. How'd it get on there? And it's really kind of, yes, because they get the benefit of the doubt. Absolutely. But they can fall short, we did with McGraw many times, as you know.
Right.
But we also, when I left there and when you left, I think he was Artist of the Decade, on airplays. But there were times, we fall short, but most often he got the benefit of the doubt. And all these artists, they get the benefit of the doubt first. And then everybody else picks up the scraps, and just begs and begs. So, but ironically, the project I'm working on now is a kid from Michigan named Nate Barnes. And the challenge here is I'm going straight to radio. And he's not a TikTok. So I think radio is a little worn out by, oh, well, we have this many views on YouTube and we have this many streams on, this platform and that platform and all the drivers. And, this kid was literally working in a nuclear plant like a couple months ago.
Oh, my gosh.
In Michigan.
Yeah.
And playing small bars. And he's a star. And Benny found him. And Benny and Jason Sellers and Rob Hatch. I think Rob Hatch actually introduced them all. So, but yeah, it just happened to be one of those things. So I found, talking to some radio guys recently in the last week or so about this kid, Nate, that they're pretty excited about getting back into the Nashville way of, remember when we used to develop artists?
Oh, I know.
And take them to radio. And so I said, well,
we spent some time with him back in those days.
Yeah, we did. We really did. We spent time with them and really taught him how to do it. And we just didn't walk in the door and go, oh, well, we have this, and this, and this. It is helpful in a lot of ways, but you don't have to have it absolutely. If you're on the street, I would recommend totally going in and trying. Anybody can have a Spotify page, and I would start there.
Start there. Mm-hmm. We're going to take a break, get a word in for one of our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with April Ryder here.
This is Sarah Beth Peary with the Band, coming live from Nashville, Tennessee, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music, with this crazy guy, Bob Bender, hosting the show. And that's only because he won't let anyone else have the microphone, well, except maybe me.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, sitting across the console, April Ryder is here. It's so good to catch up with you. I've got so many things to want to ask, and I want to try and get through all of them here. But what's it like to pitch a single to radio these days? How is it different than when you and I were doing it, that many years ago?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. I'm not going to age us here.
I think it still boils down to relationships. I mean, a lot of things have obviously changed. But it's like any other business. I mean, we have something to sell. We have a product that we, and we have to work with them to make them realize that they need our product on the air. That's not their focus. Radio's focus is obviously advertising dollars. And, in the last 7 months, it's been kind of crazy for them. So it's still about relationships. It's a little tougher when you don't have a Tim McGraw or, a Jason Aldean. It is a little tougher, because you tend to get called back faster.
But you bring relationships with you when you go from one label to another. So obviously, I would assume that would at least get them to pick up the phone most of the time, or at least some of the time.
Yes, it just causes me not to hire people it's really funny because I'm really blessed with that. I'm really, really lucky that I have some great friends, and I mean like friends in the music business that, I could call whether I have a job or not. So I'm very lucky with that. But yeah, some really quality key guys, and that's great.
And this is a business that's very fluid anyway. I mean, where we start, we don't necessarily end up.
That's right.
You and I are both,
warriors.
We both started and ended up in other places, and we know lots of people that have. Let's talk about some of the artists that you have worked with in the past. Mm-hmm. Any special war stories, anything like that's out there, not putting you on the spot? Because everybody's heard my Tim McGraw and LeAnn Rimes and JoDee Messina stories.
Oh, yeah.
Or they can read about it in the book. Well, let me ask you this. What's it like to go to work for a brand new record label?
That's a great question.
Yeah. When you and I go in and we start at Curb Records, it's already there. I mean, the groundwork's been laid out by the team before us.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, you go to something like, this brand new record label that you're at. You go into Quartz Hill, and you're starting from ground zero, right?
Yeah, everybody's like, who is that? What is that? And, thank God we're partnered with Stoney New York. I think that helps a lot. That helps people pick up the phone in the Orchard, because they're obviously huge, and they have that Japanese boy band or whatever, and so they have some cred, street cred. So, when you start getting in the major markets, they pick up the phone a little faster when you drop that in there. But when I left Curb and went to work for Benny, I went as a GM, and it was the only way I was going to leave, because, I was a VP, and I was like, I don't want to go do the same thing. So one of the first things that I was challenged with was, Thompson Square. And I mean, they were bartenders essentially downtown. And I said, well, Benny, you have Jason Aldean over here on this other label. I mean, you own them both. So I need, I'm going to have this little party. I'd like to have this little party right before CMAs. And I'd like Jason to show up. I won't say who, but there was some, there was some pushback from the staff. And Benny said, well, she's going to get what she wants and Jason's going to show up. But there was some pushback. Everybody's pretty territorial. That's one thing you can, It's kind of funny, but it is tougher when you don't have that leverage. Yeah, a little bit, because I think there was one time we spent $250,000 at Curb on just tickets to concerts.
Oh, I remember those days.
And giving away tickets to radio stations and winners and trips and things like that, because, that was the currency at the time that was, it was legal and you could do it. And,
right.
And we were promoting our artists. It also helped to just get everything else up and going. So it is tough. But I'm still, hey, this is Nashville. It's all about the song. And I think that it's still how you sell things. And I'm excited about starting a new label, actually. My Curb actually used to say this, and you'll recognize this. Artists need you 2 times in their career, on the way up and on the way down.
Yep.
Right? And I think we've both learned that. So there's something very holy and sacred about being with an artist. I'm sure you agree, on the front end. I
do too.
I really enjoy that, the branding process, and just watching them and watching them hear their song on the radio for the first time. It's just pretty awesome.
Again, I was out with Jason Aldean on the CMT tour in 2008, 2009, road managing one of the opening acts, which was Eric Durant's. And we had started the tour in theaters, 1,200, 1,500 seat theaters.
Yeah.
And by the time it wrapped up that portion of the tour, we were in arenas. And it was half arenas at first, and then it developed into full arenas, because by then She's Country had just exploded and was taking off like crazy.
Yeah.
And then they added Lady Antebellum to the tour lineup, and they had, I think, just won CMA Entertainer of the Year, Artist of the Year. Mm-hmm. And you're right, whether it's radio or it's any other aspect, you kind of want to be there in the beginning to see
incredible.
The development. And and they'll remember you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the funnest thing I think about this job. All the war stories of the bigger artists that we've worked with, and as much as you enjoy that, introducing Tim McGraw to Peyton Manning for the first time, like, that was pretty cool, right? And, I'm trying to call my dad and take a picture at the same time. And you get moments like that where you see 2 major people like Peyton and Tim that are just starstruck in awe of each other.
Yeah.
And that's really weird. But I at the end of the day, there's just something really cool about, you go into a club, like I did this with Rodney Atkins, when we sat down and we discussed all the singles, and as you remember, we rolled 6 number 1s in a row. And Rodney had sat on the shelf for 7 years or something, right? It was a long time.
Right, yeah.
And my ex-husband was actually working with him and managing him. And so I knew kind of a little the frustration on that end. It was like when Phil played us the music and was like, what do you think? And we were just, oh my gosh, this is it. And they listened to us about the single choices, and just as Tony Brown would when I was at MCA, and how we had all sat in rooms and do that. And I really appreciated that. And they would say, what do you think on this single? And I remember putting my hand up on I've Been Watching You with Rodney, because I was a new mom. It just reminded me of my little boy in the back seat, and I keep telling my husband, he's watching you, you better put your seatbelt on. I remember my friends that are same age in the industry just thought, that is the cheesiest song. I was in 8 Second Saloon in Indianapolis, and Rodney came in on stage, and there's these grown men with their arms around each other, like singing while he's on stage. And I just started crying. Well, I was probably, I was a young mom, so I'm, all over the place emotionally, but I was just like, oh my gosh. So there's just a real joy in that, for sure.
And when you have guys like, and you mentioned Phil Gernhardt, who just could pick them. That guy,
right?
He knew a hit, as soon as he heard it. And
that album was just going through hell. It was just packed full of them. And he did it with McGraw too. Phil did.
He did.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to go back a little bit. You talked about, how when we were at Curb and we spent a lot of money on a lot of promotions.
Race car party for,
And
that was awesome.
I remember we did an event for LeAnn Rimes at Caesar's Palace, and we bought out the entire floor, and we had the presidential suite, and we flew radio promotion people in and their spouses, and that was all legal back then.
Yeah.
And I guess to a certain extent it was ethical. Has that changed now? Has the hammer dropped on a lot of that from being done anymore?
That's a good question. We did do a lot of that then. And, I'm dating a guy right now that he's in the truck industry, okay? He does the exact same thing. But he's got $100 million client. He does the exact same thing. He takes his clients out. He takes his wife out. And they go golfing. They do all that. So I'm just kind of like, a lot of industries do that, really, if medical reps or whatever.
Are they governed like we are?
Things have changed. Yeah. The payola stuff has really, I kind of rolled into town when they were hauling some people off, I think, and I was like, what did you guys do to get airplay? You were like, You were buying refrigerators. You were backing your truck up to H.H. Gregg. I mean, there's some stuff. There were weddings being paid for. I mean, it was some crazy stuff going on, you know, but I think mostly that was in other genres in New York and LA, as you know, but it still did affect Nashville, and it still did come down from the higher. Now that I work for Sony, believe me, I see the firewall. I've gone through Sony compliance for a month now of, you know, what you can and can't do. It's a lot different. But, you know, my dad was really instrumental in sales. So I just, you know, you get to know people and you're passionate about your product. It's just like anything else. You do get to have some fun while you're doing it. So that's cool.
We're going to take another break, get another word in for another one of our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to have some more conversation here with April Ryder.
Hey, everybody, this is Heidi Newfield, and you are listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Are you curious about Gordon Lightfoot's songwriting process, or what it was like working with Prince in the 80s? Have you ever given any thought to what goes into a golf course design or writing a book? I'm Steve Waxman, the host of The Creationist, a podcast about people who create. Each episode features a different creator sharing stories that I hope will inspire your own creativity. The Creationist is available now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio, sitting across the console, April Ryder is with us. You've worked with a lot of just amazing acts. So I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here. Yeah. You got a favorite one? Least favorite one?
Wow. Yes. Yes and yes.
Yes and yes? Yeah. And honestly, you don't have to name names because I won't until you read my book. But
Cool.
Is there someone that, you know, just let's go with the good side of things. Is there an artist that just rises to the top as kind of the cream of the crop that you just go, man, that person was such a pleasure to work with?
Actually, there you'd be surprised. There's quite a few of those. Kiefer and Shauna Thompson. I really enjoyed working with them. Kiefer's funny. They're just funny people, and I like funny people. I became really good friends with LeAnn Womack, and she had my son's baby shower. And now, ironically, her ex-husband is my boss at this record. It's such a small town.
Yeah, it
you
is.
know? And actually, she was griping about Tony Brown one day, producing one of her stuff, and we turn around, and he's sitting behind us with the girl that works with him, whatever, I forget her name. You know, it is a real small town. So you got to be kind of careful what you say. But yeah, I see a few names in here that probably, you know, were a little rough sometimes. So
Yeah.
I love Rodney. You know, Rodney Atkins was great. Tim was great. I mean, Tim was always really good to me. Gary Allan was a blast. I loved working with Gary. That was fun.
Gary's one of those artists that really doesn't even need the rest of the nation. He's such a huge artist down in Texas and just seemed to break out into the rest of the country too.
Yeah. He's from Bakersfield, California. He's just a cool dude. I mean, he's just really, you know, fun. And I've had the pleasure of working with some really great people. I would say probably the best year is probably Curb, and watching Hank Jr., you know, that was sitting in those meetings sometimes was just, oh my goodness. And so.
Yeah, where's this going to go?
Yeah, where is this going? You know, like, I think when Dennis said he got up and said, okay, well, I'm going to go, well, no, it's time for a drink. Remember that? And, you know, and Dennis sat there and he never came back. And Dennis thought, who's getting us there by a drink? That wasn't happening. So, you know, there's just, it's been a real pleasure in a lot of ways. Logan Mize was really cool. I went out with him recently. He has just a huge following on streaming. Maggie Rose was probably one of my favorites to develop and to brand. And she's doing very well out there. So I love her. And
let's talk about Quartz Hill. Mm-hmm. What's the roster there?
Well, we are going to start off with this kid, Nate Barnes from Michigan. Like I said, he was, you know, he basically was at a nuclear plant a couple months ago, but he's just, I mean, he has got it. He looks it, he talks it, he's genuine, and when he sings, and the ladies are going to love him.
Are you starting off with just Nate at this point?
No, we're going to have we'll have some others for sure.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm trying to keep the focus on him. There'll be some name ones, you know, that people will recognize on down the path. But, you know, until they sign on the dotted line, I hate to throw their name out there. Yep. So I am excited about Nate.
Yeah, well, we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on the show. This was
Thanks,
great.
Bob. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.
Seen a half an hour go by, been watching you in that mirror light, and I can tell it's telling you lies, got you thinking to yourself that you ain't pretty. Come here, girl, give me a kiss, let me have a shot at this and tell you what that mirror missed, so you don't think that you ain't pretty. I ain't ever seen you looking any less than a 10. Every time's like an angel walked in, stealing my heart again and again, baby. I've seen your hair up, girl, and I've seen it fall. Makeup on and makeup off, inside out. I've seen it all, believe me, but I ain't ever seen you, girl, when you ain't pretty. I've seen you mad, I've seen you cry, I've seen you wake up on the wrong side, but even at your worst, I ain't ever thought one time that you ain't pretty. In a 10, every time's like an angel walked in, stealing my heart again and again, baby. I've seen your hair up, girl, and I've seen it fall. Makeup on and makeup off, inside out. I've seen it all, believe me, but I ain't ever seen you, girl, when you ain't pretty. On and makeup off, inside out. I've seen it all, believe me, and I know you completely, but I ain't ever seen you, girl, you ain't pretty. Yeah, you're so pretty.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.